Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Still in Love podcast. This is episode 1, season 2, and we are starting with some thunder.
Some real thunder.
Some real thunder.
This episode is titled The Marriage Bed.
Hey, now.
Let's talk about the marriage bed. The marriage bed. First, before we get into this, we want you all to know that we are so excited to be back.
Yeah.
Couldn't wait to get back. There's a lot in store for you. We missed you all. We missed you. We missed your questions. And there's a lot in store. So I'm really excited about it. Just a lot of announcements, a lot of things that's getting ready to take place. So I'm really excited about it. Are you? Are you excited? Look, if you're excited about it, just make sure you shoot us some questions and some information, feedback about how God is using this podcast to bless your life. Let's get into it. The marriage bed.
The marriage bed.
The marriage bed. So a lot of times the marriage couples and singles also have questions about some of the things we're going to talk about, just about what's permissible in the marriage bed. Not just in the bed, but in the marriage bed. Because sometimes you got singles who try and do things that married couples are doing. And married couples do things that singles are doing. And I talk about this all the time. You know, singles, you said this, that, you know, you couldn't wait to get married. You couldn't wait. So when you get married, you're going to have as much sex you want to. You're gonna be,
whenever.
yeah, that's right. You're going to be swinging from the chandeliers. It's going to be on and popping. You got married and you can stop having sex with your spouse. And so
universal.
you got singles who having sex, you know, like married folks should be having sex, and married folks are abstaining. How single people should be abstaining, and that is a problem. And so there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of people that are misinformed as it relates to sex and as it relates to marriage. And we want to talk about the marriage bed. What does the Lord say about the marriage bed? What is it He says to us about the marriage bed? So let's go with this scripture.
Yes.
Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 4.
Okay.
Because oftentimes, people try and give their opinions. There's certain things we have to be understanding about because some subjects the Bible is silent about. And where God is silent, we must be silent. And some subjects God speak about, and it's not the ideal terminology, or it's not the exact terminology that we may use, but God will speak about it, and those things we speak about. So it's not about my opinion or about your opinion. It's what does the Lord say pertaining certain things. And so Hebrews chapter 13 verse 4 says, marriage should be honored by all.
Yeah.
And the marriage bed kept pure. For God will judge the adulterer and all the sexual immoral.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that again. Marriage should be honored by all. We'll start there. Marriage should be honored by all. And the marriage bed kept pure. That's important.
Honored, respected.
It should be respected. So let's talk about the marriage bed. What should happen in the marriage bed and what should not happen in the marriage bed?
I think even going back to the first part of the scripture that says, let marriage be held in honor. Let marriage be held in respect. I think that is even for, even when you look at the end of that, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. You are, as an individual, I honor my marriage, but I am also mindful of my presence as a believer, as a believing woman, as a saved woman, as a Christian woman, that I am also honoring someone else's marriage, and I'm not going to come and defile or make it impure by coming on to your husband, by making advances as somebody else's man, and vice versa. So I just wanted to make that.
That is so good. Because
before we get into some of this.
Because sometimes we honor ours, or we think that we can honor our marriage, but you don't honor someone else's marriage.
Right.
Even if you're a single person, honor someone else's marriage. It's not just about your marriage, but it's about even before you get married. If you're not married, honoring someone else's marriage as well. To where if he comes on to you, if she comes on to you, know that I'm not gonna to violate their marriage because I'm honoring their marriage, because God tells us to honor marriage. I think that is really keen, because some people would violate someone else's marriage because they'll say, well, they're in the process of getting a divorce, or they're separated, or they don't even sleep together, and so they'll say, I can move forward. They hadn't been together in 7 years. They hadn't been together in 10. I don't care if it's 25. If they hadn't been together in 25 years, if they've not gotten a divorce, they're still married. And if you are sleeping with an individual that's married, you're committing adultery and dishonoring their marriage.
That's why it's so important. And I think the author of Hebrews was helping those of us who are the readers understand where the value should be placed. If the value and the honor and the respect is placed on marriage, period, there will be certain things that I just won't do.
That's right.
Because the value, the honor, the respect of that thing is already established in me. So there's some things that will be off limits. I won't test the waters with somebody else's man. I won't even contemplate it because I place a value on marriage, period. So if I meet someone and he is still currently married, the relationship has to cease now because I have a value that is placed on marriage.
Well, can we just
Listen, because I value marriage, there are certain things.
We're just friends, though.
Yeah. It's very similar to our relationship with the Lord. When we place value on that, when we place respect on that, when we place that relationship in high regard, it's going to determine how I interact with others. And I'm going to be more mindful of how I carry out that value in my relationship to other people. Yes. What you value dictates your behavior.
That's right.
If I value marriage, it's going to dictate whether or not I give a married man, regardless of the situation that he's in. If you are still in covenant with someone else, whether it's been 15 years, 20 years, 40 years, it doesn't matter. You are still tied to and in covenant with someone else. Therefore, you off limits to me because I place value on it. And I don't care how we try to justify it. Is the individual still in covenant? Are they still connected to another individual? Well, then there is no other way around.
That's it.
There's no way around. I don't care about a circumstance. I don't care about a situation. Because there are ways to make the D word happen without consent. So there is no way around. Or honestly, in today's time, there is no excuse for continuing a relationship. Oh, well, our finances are tied up. Oh, well, they moved to another state.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're sick. And I can't get to them. Or we've just decided because we've got so many things together that we need to continue. If the covenant is still there, if there's still legal binding, if we are still married and it's legally binding,
yep,
you're still married.
Yeah. Tori, I think a lot of times in marriage, and this is really good. A lot of times in marriage, people really don't, in particular the church, don't want to talk about sex.
Well, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that too. I think there's a lot of reasons for that.
What?
We have not, the way that we have handled sex has been so, it's taboo. We have not, for one, we have not really looked at it as God's design. We have not looked at it like God gave us this within the confines of marriage to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
And we have enjoyed it, unfortunately, in ways outside of marriage. So what comes with that? Guilt, condemnation, excessive lust. So because we've done it outside of marriage, we've also done that outside of God's design, outside of God's way, outside of, in some respects, outside of God's protection. So in some areas, we have been left to ourselves. The lust has just been allowed to continue to be perverted. And so now what we're seeing is an influx of doing things outside of God's will and outside of God's way. So it is no surprise that pornography is one of the major tactics that the enemy has used to destroy marriage.
Absolutely.
It's no surprise. And so that didn't come from a place of wholeness or purity. Yeah. That absolutely came from a place of evil. And it has gained steam all of these years. And now we're dealing with the fruit of that on top of other, the continued fruit of sexual sin.
Yeah. And I think, the church really stay away from certain things and certain topics. And so sometimes it's talking about sex in church is like, yeah, we don't want to talk about sex. But the Bible is full of stories as it relates to sex, and God speaks to that. Sex is to be enjoyed between a husband and a wife, between a male and a female. Let me say that again. Sex is to be enjoyed between a husband and a wife, male or female.
Correct.
The man shall leave his mother and father, and you be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And oftentimes we don't, it's just when it comes to sex, we don't want to talk about it. And Songs of Solomon, Songs of Solomon, it's all throughout Scripture.
Yeah.
The beauty in enjoying that, and Scripture talks about that. And so we don't really do it. Not innovation. We're going in. We're talking about it. We're dealing with it, because where God speaks, we want to speak. And where he's silent, we want to be silent as well. Now, you mentioned something about pornography, because these are questions that people have as it relates to marriage. What do, how do I, a couple of things before we get to how do I enhance sex in my marriage. Let's talk to the individual who's looking and who's listening now, who feel that, I'm not getting enough sex in my marriage. To the male, I'm not getting, the marriage is, the bed is undefiled. And I feel like it's not enough taking place in the bed. And I'm frustrated. So what do I need to do pertaining to my frustration? Because my wife or my husband is not giving me enough sex. And so what I need to do about that? I had an expectation before we got married, and now we married, and that expectation is not being met. And I don't feel like we have conversations. We don't talk about it. We don't deal with it. And I ain't getting enough sex, and the temptation is rising and help me, with something. I can't tell my wife that I'm being tempted, or I can't tell my husband I'm being tempted, but I just know I'm not getting it enough, and something gonna have to shake.
I would say what you were, I felt like alluding to is we have to talk about it, because there is some reasoning behind it. There's always the reasoning behind why it's not taking place. And you said, for the person who has this expectation, was your expectation realistic? Was that an expectation that was shared with your spouse? And that's why it's important, even in pre-marriage, to within, I think, some limitations, that you talk about expectations, that you talk about, and not just sharing your expectation, but you're also allowing the person that you're communicating the expectation to speak back to you. Because we always feel like, well, I told you how I felt, and that was supposed to be enough. And it's like, yeah, no. How do you feel about what I shared? Are you in agreement with this, or did you just let me say that, yeah, I expected it 5 days a week and you didn't say nothing back, so yeah, I just assumed that we was both on the same page? And it's like, yeah, no. Let's make sure that when we're communicating about sex, that you do say what you want. Let your request be made known unto your spouse, but you also sit and you listen to hear what your spouse has to say about your request. Because if not, your request will continue to not be met. That's your right. Needs will not be met because there was not an agreement.
That's right.
There was no agreement. You made a statement. A statement is, okay, I it's like when we go purchase a car and they put this contract in front of us and they say, well, we expect this much down, or we expect this much a month. They don't pull that paper away and say, well, we told you the expectation. It's like, no, we want you to sign to make sure that you are in agreement with what was just said. Yeah. So there is two parts to that communication about the needs being met. You say what you need, and then you listen to hear your spouse's response to what to the request, and vice versa. Absolutely. Then you turn around and you ask your spouse, hey, what is it that you need? And let me make sure that I am meeting that. So this is what I heard you say, and this I agree to X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So that would be first. And I don't know if the conversations are just not being had. I can assume that they aren't. And maybe they have. And sometimes we are under the assumption that we only need to communicate one time.
That's that good.
I only need to tell you something one time. And if you didn't get it the first time, you don't love me. That's and right. It's like, listen. You tell your children to do things multiple times. You love them. No, God tells us.
Come on, girl.
God tells us to do things. The last thing that God told you to do, how many times did he tell you to do it? But we have these unrealistic expectations of people and of humans. You don't do anything the Lord told you to do. And when he does, he's told you 12 times to stop eating it, to stop doing it. He's told you 12 times to walk away from their relationship. He's told you 100 times to stop spending your money on XYZ. He's told you to budget. He's told you all of these things, and you still don't do it.
Yep.
So why do we have this expectation from our spouses and other people we're in relationship with that their behavior is, if they love me, then one time is enough?
That's good.
You love God.
That's right. That's right.
You love God,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, we love to say we love him, but that's not realistic. So let's take that yoke off of all relationships. Parental,
Yep.
parent to child, child to parent, spouse, friendship. Take that off, because you don't do anything that somebody else wants you to do the first time, second time, third time, or the fourth time. We have to extend grace to each other in the relationships. So let's go back and say it again. Go back and say it again. Go back and tell them again. Especially if you know that your spouse loves you. It could be a lot of different things going on, especially as it relates to sex. If it's a female who's saying, or a woman who's saying that my husband is not giving me enough, then sister, I would venture to say that there is other things going on, and it is not just he don't want you. It's got to be. There's a reason for it.
That's right.
Let's figure out the reason. And if you are letting your spouse know that I am with you, come what may, that we in this thing together, that we're gonna figure it out together, then we'll get past that. We'll get over that hump.
And I think what you're saying is so important. About sex, communicating. Communicate. You have to over communicate as it relates to sex. Sometimes people, you say they communicate one time and they think that's enough. No, I got to communicate. I already told her I wanted to do 4 times a week. You got to let her know, hey, listen, like, this is not enough, and this is what I want. This is what I desire, and then really trying to get to the bottom of why is it that she doesn't want it. Was it some sexual abuse that took place in her life? Was it, any type of trauma that she's dealt with or she's experiencing, and working through that? Does she need counseling? So it's those type of things, but the conversations need to take place, because there's too many people that are married that are sexually frustrated that don't communicate their frustrations. They just know, and before you have it, somebody's committing, adultery, somebody's having an affair. It's sometimes you have expectations, but you have unmet expectations because you have uncommunicated expectations.
Correct.
You hadn't said anything.
Yes.
You have expectations that they know nothing about.
Yep.
And so in your mind, I wanted it 5 times a week. I'm only getting it 1 time a week. But it was never communicated. So you have to communicate your expectations and continue to sit down and talk about what's uncomfortable to so many people, and really trying to become comfortable with what has been uncomfortable, and trying to figure out, why is this uncomfortable? These conversations must be had. If you want to have a healthy and whole marriage, these conversations about sex must be had. Just because your husband is not making advances at you does not mean that he does not want you. There's a reason if he's not making advances of you. Maybe you've rejected him so much to where he feels that if I'm afraid to make an advancement at you because I'm afraid to get rejected. So these things need to be communicated. Maybe your wife don't make advances because you rejected her so much, or maybe she's dealt with molestation as a child and she hadn't communicated that. So many people are living in a dark place, a place where they've experienced trauma, experienced abuse, experienced molestation, and they've not communicated, and they've taken these issues into their marriage, and they are not meeting the expectation of their spouse, but they hadn't communicated what is taking place with them. And these things should and must be communicated if you want a healthy and whole marriage. So sex and the lack thereof is hurting so many couples, and so many people are living, in unfaithfulness or infidelity because of this. And so it's important to talk about it, to have conversations, to really sit down, and just at our retreats and at our marriage huddles and different things, we really put emphasis on the importance of communicating about sex. What is your expectations? One of the things that we did was amazing, and hopefully on our podcast we'll do it. Just as we communicated, what are your expectations about sex? And now you communicate your expectations. Now let's compare notes. What's your expectations about how we communicate?
Yep.
Now you tell me from 1 to 10. What do
Yep.
you? How do you think we communicate?
Yep.
And and so it's those type of things that just that dialogue and talking, because your expectation could be twice a week. Mine could be 5 times a week. So how do we reconcile the two? Let's get together and let's talk about that. And let's but those things are important, and it can't be taboo and something that we just never talk about. And we just and sometimes your spouse don't want to talk about it because they know that you're uncomfortable with talking about it. But something that great, something that important, it is important that you talk about it. Even your lack of desire, or sometimes as a woman, it's dealing with stress and dealing with frustration and dealing with pressure, or you got kids, or just and you don't feel like having sex, you don't feel like connecting. These things have to be communicated and talked about, because your husband feel like whenever you don't want to be involved with him, it's because of him. But it has to be communicated. It's not because I have a lot that's going on, a lot on my mind. It's not because of you. But also help her relieve her stress, help her lighten the load, so that she won't be focused on her children and paying the bills and doing everything else, and she can give you the type of attention that you need. Those things are important, so that the marriage bed can be on point. The marriage bed need to be pure. The marriage bed need to happen, and we use this terminology a lot. It needs to happen early and what?
Often.
Early and often. Sex needs to happen early and often. When you're having sex with your spouse, you're connecting with your spouse. You're becoming the one with your spouse. It's an emotional connection. It's a spiritual connection. It's an intimate connection. And you, as a believer that's married, want to connect with your spouse as much as possible. And talk about those things that hinder you from connecting. Talk about those things that hinder you from connecting, or that make it difficult for you to connect. We talked before just about how some women really have a difficult time connecting with their husbands. I want you to speak to that a little bit. Just the difficulty in connecting, the difficulty in getting, being familiar with their bodies, not really wanting it, having to get up for it. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I think a lot of women are struggling with that. That's listening to this podcast now. They're saying, my husband wanted a lot. I really don't want it a lot. And I don't know. He wanted to do things and I'm really not comfortable with doing. And I've never really delved into this. And I've never really enjoyed sex. I just do it. I want to hear about this. I think this is going to bless somebody.
I think it is the understanding that for us, sex is not just physical. It involves almost every aspect of who we are. So it's a physical
When you say us,
act.
you're talking about?
I'm talking about women.
Okay.
So it is a physical act. So my body is involved in it, but my mind is also involved. And when I am overwhelmed in my to-do list, when I'm overwhelmed in my other roles or responsibilities, especially if children are at play, because I have to be present emotionally and physically with them. And if I can be honest, it can be draining. And I don't have enough, let's just say my emotional meter, I start off with 100. Well, I've been to work, that took 50. I came home and got the kids, that took 42. I got 8% left. So when it's time to connect in that way, there's some lacking there. There is some, and so it's learning to balance what we give out. It's learning to make sure that we know if I only have 100, if my meter is at 100, then I have to be very careful with how much I'm giving at work, how much I'm giving to kids. I have to balance out this amount that I've been given. And we've never, I don't think, as women, been challenged in that area. We've never been challenged to think of it like that. We just go through the motions. I am supposed to do this. If I work outside of the home, I am to be on point outside of the home. If I work in the home, that's still work. That's still work. It's not just because you're sitting at home don't mean that it's still not going to be taxing on you. If you are a stay-at-home mom, you likely have very young children. And if there is one or multiples, that is still emotionally, you still have to be present for that. And I won't even talk about new kids. I won't even talk about children under 1. I won't do it. So all of that, you're bringing all of that. And we just have to have, I think, more conversations with my sister friends about making sure that what you have, that for one, that you're filling your capacity, that you are filling in you are making sure that your cup never goes empty. Like your cup can never be
Come on,
empty
talk to
because
us.
you can't give out of an empty place. So you have to ensure that emotionally you are well, that you are strong, that you are able to give what is needed to the people around you. And I know this to be true as women. When our cups are empty, when there is nothing there,
Come on, girl.
we cannot give to other people. As a matter of fact, when our cup is empty, when it's almost to depletion, you don't even have the capacity to think about other people.
My goodness.
You don't do it. When that cup is almost low, you're only focused on you. When your cup is full and it's overflowing, you have enough to give other people. You're not so dry. You're not so deprived.
That's
you
right.
can give. So
That's
it's
right.
ensuring, before we can talk about giving to your man, give to yourself.
Come on, girl.
Give to you. Make sure your cup is full and it's flowing. Then you can give to your children. Then you can give to your man. So it's more than just, hey, here's what you need. Here is a quick fix. No, the fix is fill you. Make sure you are getting full. And, believers are listening to this podcast, but hey, even if you're an unbeliever, Jesus is the only thing that feels. Jesus is the only thing that truly, truly feels and fills us up. So, we're full, and then we're able to give to other people.
right.
And then when you're full in Jesus, God gives you you're walking more, or you're more likely to walk in discernment. You're more likely to say, this is what my child needs right now. This is what my husband needs. It's not just sex. Sometimes it's not sex that he needs. Sometimes it's just making him slow down and say, hey, you good? Everything okay? So, but you can't get that if your cup is empty. If there's nothing in here, you're not thinking about, you're only, and I'm sure there is a correct term for this, but when you are completely empty, like, yeah, ain't nothing coming out of this cup. There's nothing here, and it's dry. It's needy. It's when something is dry, it's famished, and if you listen, even let's go back to Cain and Abel. You were hungry. And he said, I'm famished to the point of death. Now, unless you had gone a long time without food, you probably wasn't about to die. You just felt you were real hungry. Mm-hmm. And you made certain decisions because he did not have in that particular moment. You sold your birthright. In essence, you gave it away because temporarily you did not have what you needed. Now, the same thing, ladies. We will make decisions because we feel like we don't have. You don't have at this moment. Now you're operating from this place of lack, this place of dry, this place of famish. When honestly, if you fill your cup, you will see things the way they really are, and you'll keep your position in the meantime.
Yes, that's good. That's good. And if you ask men and you ask women, and this is the thing. Husbands have asked their wives this. We've talked about this before, just about, what's your desire as it relates to sex? You'll really understand that a lot of women don't desire sex. We know that they don't desire sex as much as men, but some women don't really desire sex a lot, period.
Can I tell you why?
Tell me why.
So I just recently had this conversation with someone, and we talked about all of the different scenarios that would make a woman say, I don't really desire it. One of them is we are so unsatisfied with our own physical bodies. We are very much unaware of our own bodies. We don't even know what brings us pleasure because you don't know yourself. You don't know anything about yourself. You look at yourself when you're putting on your clothes, and you know some things that you like and you don't like. But most women have never, and when I say explore your body, I don't mean explore your body with your own hands. I mean, have you ever looked at yourself? Like, really look. I don't want to look at myself. I don't like the way I look. I'm too disgusted. Well, sister friend, get to love it, because that's what you're giving off. How you feel about you is going to be given out to the world, including your husband. If you feel some type of way about your stomach, the extra rolls on the side, the extra rolls on the back, the way your thighs rub together, if you feel some type of way about that, you are going to give that to your spouse. So we are not satisfied and loving ourselves enough to even want somebody to. I don't want you exploring a place that I hate. I don't want you touching on something that I despise.
That's right.
So that's one of the reasons why, as women, we don't love ourselves. We don't look at ourselves and say, I love you.
Yes.
I love all of that. And if there are stretch marks, and if there are other things or parts of your body that you don't love, especially if your stretch marks came after children, then consider the miracle that God used your body to do. You brought life into this world. So those little tiger stripes on the sides, them tiger stripes on the back and on the stomach, honey, those are war wounds. And they came
Come on, girl.
because you brought life into this world. If they are there and it had nothing to do with children, it's because you, like some of us sometimes we do, we have excess of zoom zoom and wham whams that we loved, even in that. And you are living here. You are alive and well. Sister friend, appreciate the fact that you are now alive and well with all of your extra cushion, with all of the extra stripes. It is God's making. Now, some things, I am not saying that there are some things that we aren't to do better on. If all of our excess of zoom zoom and wham whams is affecting our health, if it is affecting our health, then we make the moves to do that. But that is separate from, let's just begin by having and developing. And it's not a one-time thing. You have to continue the work of appreciating what God has given you. And if there are improvements, again, if there are areas where you need to improve for the betterment of your health, then do that so that you can have longevity in life. But when you look at yourself in the mirror, have a genuine appreciation for what God has given you. And at the core of that, it is the ability, it's life.
Yeah.
It's breath in your body. So that's one of the reasons we don't like our bodies. So I don't want you exploring, again, an area that I don't even like. The other one is we don't enjoy sex because it's not pleasurable to us. So no, I don't want it because I don't enjoy it. And I don't enjoy it because there's certain parts of me that I don't want you to touch. Keep the lights off. Don't touch me here. Don't touch me like that. Don't touch me here. If some people are not comfortable with somebody going up their side, because that's where the rolls are. So I only want to do it like this. So I limit your interaction with my whole and my complete body. Wow. Well, that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. So again, it is not just that women don't want it. It is, I don't like my body. I'm not comfortable with somebody else exploring my body with me. I don't enjoy sex because I'm not really getting all, I can only do it this way in this particular position because this limits friction or it limits, and for some people it's, I don't have the limit. Listen, my leg can't do that. My leg can't go back like that. I can't turn over like that. You can't put me on my side like that. It may be other physical, what is funny? It might be other physical limitations that's present. And if that's the case, then maybe there's some extra walking, Pilates, stretching, whatever. But just understand, my brothers, I feel like, what is the problem?
No, it's no problem. It's you. This is good. This is good.
It's more like, it's more than one way to skin a cat. It is more than one reason. And we cannot and we have to stop chalking it up to women are just, they just. And it's like, it's not just, they just. There are other things at play, and we have to address and provide a opportunity for all of that to be addressed. Even as it relates to women not enjoying sex. For some women, I don't necessarily know what I like. I don't know what I like. I don't know that I like to be kissed here. I don't know that I don't like to be kissed here. I don't know because I haven't allowed myself to even be explored like that. Even in marriage, I've not allowed it. I stop him at the gate. This is all we doing, brother, and this is as far as we going. So I'm not comfortable enough, and I haven't gotten it. So if the goal, and listen to me, I believe most women feel like the goal of sex is for him to have pleasure, not for me. Not for me. We have not even been taught that. That is not even a discussion that when you sit around other married women, nobody's talking about how, are you making sure that you get what you need, sister? He getting his. Are you sure that you're getting what you need? Have you experienced an orgasm? Do you know what that feels like? Are you getting it every time? Cause he gonna get it. He's getting his. And I think there is so much to be understood about sex on both ends until we started having some conversations about even pleasure for a man.
Yeah.
Most women just assume where he's going to get his because the act is enough. And it's like for a dude, it's like, no, the act is not enough. Yeah. I like foreplay too. I like to be, you know what I'm saying? I like a kiss every now and then. You know what I'm saying? Well, where was that conversation taking place? Because my assumption of it, even coming into marriage, was that no, the goal of sex was for him to just be satisfied. So when the light bulb comes on through conversation, like, no, I like this too. No, I like that too. Like, oh, hold on. So now you get to really see what God intended in marriage.
This is good, girl.
Amen.
This is really good. I think, and that's what people really need to talk about and really need to understand the importance of that. I remember us having that conversation, and you was like, I thought the goal was this. And I'm like, that's the ultimate goal. Yeah. But I want, before I get to that goal, I want some things to
take
help
place before we
get there. It's going to the restaurant, and I gave the illustration. It's going to the restaurant. The goal is for me to get full.
Yeah.
But I want to enjoy the ambiance of the restaurant.
Yeah.
I want to sit and eat the food. I want to talk while we eating the food.
Yeah.
I want something really good to drink.
Yeah.
I don't just come in the restaurant to get full.
Yeah.
I come to enjoy the whole experience. And so those are the things that have to be talked about, because sometimes you can feel that I'm just going to lay down and give it to my husband and so he's satisfied. No, he's not satisfied.
Correct.
He can do it and he still feel that I'm really not satisfied. Yep. I'm full, but I wasn't satisfied. I didn't enjoy this experience. Right. You ever ate something and I'm full, but I didn't enjoy the experience. And so sometimes and that's important in marriage with sex, to talk about that, to where, and being open for your spouse to be able to share some things. Hey, look, I like for you to touch me right here. I like to be kissed on my neck. Correct. I don't like to be kissed on my chest. I notice that you kiss me on my stomach, and I really don't like anybody kiss me on my stomach.
Yes.
I like you to kiss me on my thighs. Yes. Well, because when you kiss me on my thighs, this is how it make me feel. Yes. I like you to touch me right here. Yes. I don't really like this position. I only do this position because I thought that you like this position. Do you like this position? This is my favorite position, because when I'm in this position, it makes me feel like this. Yes. And so those are the things to really, really talk about.
And we can get rid of shame. And we can let's completely move it out the way, because we grown.
That's right.
We are adults. We are adults that stood before the preacher and we said, I do. And we can do away with this notion that we can't talk about it. We kind of have to move beyond the uncomfort of some of it.
That's right.
Because we're grown. And that's moving towards maturity. If you are still if it's for no other reason, I'm not talking about we have some issues with exploration because of maybe some past trauma or past abuse, because that could bring about a different, I don't want you to explore because it's already been previously explored in a very perverted way.
That's right.
So I have to work through that in therapy. I have to work through reconnecting with my body. I'm just saying that we just don't want to have conversations because if I can say it, we lack maturity in there.
Absolutely.
And it's just, sometimes you just have to go and jump out the boat and let's just have the conversation. And you'll find that it creates an intimacy between you and your spouse.
Yes.
And, when there's true intimacy there, it keeps the devil at bay.
That's right. That's right.
It keeps the devil at bay.
The importance of, and it's this, to where, hey, what, have you had the conversation? What do you like? What do you really like? And then communicate. Have you told your spouse, hey, look, this is what I really like.
Yeah.
I like you to do this. When
Yeah.
you slow down right here. When you do, he don't even know. He's like, you ain't said nothing to him. Do you like when I do this? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Do you like this? Do you like kiss right here?
Yep.
And he's doing something, but because you never said anything about it, you don't even like it.
Yep. Thus leading to I don't like sex.
Yeah.
So, brother, it may not have anything to do with trauma. It may not have anything to do with her not loving her body. She just has not enjoyed the experience with you thus far.
So now,
let's recreate it. Let's take all that
how
away.
do we recreate that? Because he's listening now saying, my goodness, my wife don't like sex. So what I'm gonna do?
All right, so
because Freaky Francis loves sex, and I don't want to go back to Freaky Francis.
We're not worried about Freaky Francis.
I don't want to go back to Freaky Francis.
You're gonna worry about Wilhelmina that's at home. And you're gonna give Wilhelmina what she needs because Freaky Francis is not.
Wilhelmina says she don't like sex.
Okay, if Wilhelmina has not had any past trauma and it's just she has not enjoyed the experience thus far, then how about we have a weekend of exploration of we're gonna call this the find out what you like weekend. Well, we're going to start Friday, and we're just going to figure out what we like from Friday to Sunday. It's time to go to service. And when we get to church, we both going to be smiling from ear to ear like some chess cats because we have had a weekend of figuring out what we like.
All right.
That's what we're going to call it. Find out what you like.
Find out what you like weekend.
Find out what you like weekend. And that's how we're going to find out what you like. And my goal is to find out as the spouse. My job is to find out what you like and vice versa.
Yeah. Let me give you a little nugget right here. Ladies, listen, because I know I've had a lot of questions. I talk a lot about this because what I've seen that's the norm is men looking to really, approach their wife and sleep with their wives, and the wife is rejecting the husband. So we see that a lot. But I've had a lot of questions about women who feel like, hey, I approach my husband, I want to sleep with my husband, and he rejects me. And we talked about that, and you'll hear it on another podcast, but I share this a lot, that if your husband is rejecting you, then there's one of four issues. One, he could have an illness, and it's affecting his, an erection. And so he can't perform the way that he was once performing. That could be one. Another one could be infidelity. He's cheating, and he doesn't want to sleep with you because he's cheating or he's watching pornography, and so he's pleasing himself or someone else is pleasing him, or he's not attracted to women. Now that may be a little far, but that could be the case. And then the fourth one is ED, erectile dysfunction, that a lot of men don't know about, and some that do know about it are afraid to really go and get checked, because a lot of times a man's sexuality is a man's manhood sometimes is perceived to be caught up in his sexuality, and so he feels if he can't perform there, then it's a problem with him as a man, and so he don't really communicate, and so you feel a certain kind of way about you all not being intimate, and it's important to really have the conversation with him about, is it one of these four? So what's really important, if your husband is the one that pursues you the most, then what's important is understanding that even if you're having sex with him, that's great, but sometimes he wants you to pursue him. He wants you to pursue him. He wants you to make sure that, the tone is set. He wants you to make sure that everything is on point. He wants you to be the aggressor. He wants you to do most of the thing that he does to you. He wants you to begin to do that. He wants you to ask for him. He wants you to send a text and say, I can't wait till you get in the house tonight. When you get in, I'm talking about I'm laying you on that bed and I'm finna go to work. He want to hear that kind of stuff from you. So just know that's a little nugget for you to where, move from not desiring sex to desiring sex to enjoying sex to becoming the initiator in sex. Come on now, y'all.
Yep.
So from maybe not desiring sex to desiring sex to having sex often, to becoming one that initiates it. So he wants it. Not only does he want it, but he want you to initiate it. You would turn that man out, and he like, man, what's got into you? But it's a good what's gotten into you. So that's just helpful. Hey, listen, we have to stop right now.
Yes.
Because this is good.
Yes.
This is good. Look, next
Yes.
week is going to bless your entire life. And so be sure to tune in with us next week to hear the conclusion of the matter.
Yes. We'll see you next week. Bye, y'all. Thank you for listening to the Still in Love podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has indeed blessed your life. If it has, we need you to do 3 things for us. 1, we want you to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform so that way you can be notified when a new episode drops. Number 2, we want you to review it. Click on that 5-star and let us know how much you enjoyed it. We absolutely love feedback here at the Still in Love podcast, and this helps us to make sure that we are scratching where there's an itch. And number 3, we want you to share it with a friend or family member. Also, if you have a question, we'd love to hear it and even talk about it right here on the podcast. You can submit those questions at stillinlovepodcast.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Innovation Church Memphis and on TikTok at We Are Innovation. Until next time, peace.
Don't just start in love,
but stay in love.
Thanks for tuning in to Still in Love podcast. God bless.